speaker for this evening. So
I can't hear anything.
Yeah, I guess Shivangi got disconnected. Let me just try
Okay.
to get in touch with her.
yeah, I'm back. I'm sorry. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can.
So just to give a brief introduction about Naman sir. Naman is a master's in education student at Harvard University. As an engineer turned educationist, he works at the intersection of technology and education. His previous leadership projects include leading the Solar Digital Night Schools at Barefoot College International, co-founding Vidyalaya Vistaar, School Plus, and founding Palak. As an entrepreneur, Naman is a recipient of numerous awards, including the Harappa Habit Hero Awards in 2020 for ensuring education continuation for children during COVID-19, 2019 Karmveer Chakra Awards in association with the United Nations, the 2019 Rashtriya Gaurav Samman by the National Youth Awardees Federation of India. He is also a founding member, participant at Anubhav Lecture Series, an initiative of Harris School of Public Policy, University of Chicago. His work in child education has been covered across various digital and print media, including a leading front page cover story by the Dainik Bhaskar, highest circulated daily newspaper in India, identifying Naman as a leading youth leader involved in nation building. Sir, we are delighted to have you with us today and very excited to hear from you.
Thank you, Shivangi. Thank you, Nupur. Thank you, Abhishek. I hope you all can hear me
Yes,
nicely.
sir,
Yes.
we can.
Okay, great. So yeah, it's an honor to be here. And like Abhishek mentioned, we both keep on talking to each other like once in a while and try to learn from each other. I've learned a lot from Abhishek over the course of many years now. And I mean, I didn't know that he also sort of follows what I have been doing so far. So it's good to know that. So what I'll do is like I'll just quickly jump into what I had planned for the day. So Abhishek had mentioned that there will be a lot of youngsters, probably like interns, and a lot of those people who will be joining on the call today. And so what I had done is that I had created a very small deck for all of you, and I'll share it with you even after the session, so that you can look at the deck even after that. And since the topic was about policy perspective, so I was wondering, what would be valuable for all of you, and I thought that it probably would be a good idea for me to give a perspective from the leader's perspective, like or from the upcoming leaders' perspective, in terms of okay, how policy, how can we basically get involved in policy, and how we can think about changing the policy from a leader's perspective, or for an upcoming leader's perspective. So that's where my presentation is going to be. I'll just quickly share my screen. So just give me a thumbs up if you can uh, see my screen. Okay, I see Shivangi nodding. Uh, okay, great. So I'll just quickly go through, like what I have created, and like overall the agenda that I was thinking for today could be that I'll share a bit about so far what has been my thoughts and learnings, like in a very short span of time, like in about 15 to 20 minutes. And then I wanted to keep a lot of time for questions. I know that there were a lot of questions that had like before the meeting also, there were a lot of questions that had come. So you are free to like ask any questions after I share my thoughts and everything. And I would also request that this be an environment which is very welcome and which is very open, so you can ask me about anything, and you're free to critique, and you're free to question some of the things that I'll talk about, and all of that. So but at the same time being welcoming and being like honest in terms of your questioning to each other and also to me as well. And then there would be like follow-ups and keep in touch opportunities as well. So I'm pretty like I say that I'm a very open book, so you can like reach out to me anytime that you want to, just in terms of any help that you might need to, like in terms of admissions or like any of that any of the things that you feel I can help you with. So I'll be very happy to do that. And before starting, I think one of the things that I would want to say and sort of acknowledge that all of the knowledge that all of us basically contain, especially the knowledge that I would say that I have built over the years, is not my own single knowledge. I feel that it's a lot of that has to do with the prior experiences, like your work experiences and the realities, the people that you meet by living on the ground and by like just talking to people. So I would not say that all of the things that I'm presenting today are my own individual knowledge, but yes, they are my own experiences, and I would categorize it that way. And then yes, a lot of it has been driven from the readings that I've done about the people and about the government by working with the government at the ground, like Abhishek was saying in Mathura, and then a lot of books and then research papers and so on and so forth. Two of the professors that have been really influential so far in my journey at Harvard. I've learned a lot from them, and you'll see a lot of my learnings that have come from them being reflected in the presentation today. And these are Professor James Horner and Professor Paul Revel. So they are the experts of non-profit management and also like policy in general. So I've learned a lot from them, and I would like to acknowledge their role in my learning and my knowledge base. And obviously, like peers at HGSC, like Harvard Graduate School of Education, and also peers who have had the privilege to work in the past as well. So they are basically collectively individuals and people and readings and books and experiences that drive my thought, and which is what I'm going to present today. And an important disclaimer: this is not an exhaustive presentation. It's an iterative presentation. You're free to like, as I said, ask questions and critique it, and like make it better. And it's going I hope it's going to be a process that will be helpful for the both of us, the audience, and also myself. Okay, so the big question that I wanted to ask everyone today, and there is a very great article by Charles Brown, I think. Sorry, Charles Blow. You'll see it in the sources as well. The big question that he asks is basically, as a leader or as a leader in making, you have to decide on one particular aspect, or at least if you don't decide it, but you have to reflect a lot on the fact that, are you a politician or an activist? Like, even if you want to create a policy change, where do you see yourself being more inclined towards? So if I ask a question, let's say, is Barack Obama, for example, a politician or an activist? I mean, I would say that he probably is a politician, because, for example, if he's an activist, he probably can't say that, okay, I am completely taking one particular side, right? Because he's a politician for the entire country, right? He's representing the entire country. And politicians usually, if you see that, okay, probably I'm a politician or I want to be a politician, you can't really think about bringing, like radical changes immediately, in a very short frame of time, for example. But an activist probably might think about that, because activists are usually people who say that, okay, there is something wrong in the society and I want to change it, and I want to change it now. The process might be bigger and might be a longer term process, but a politician probably can't take sides, like all the time. Somewhere or the other, the aspect of coalition and the aspect of inclusion is very, very important for a politician when they are making the policy. So I would say that, as an upcoming leader, probably that is a good exercise to think about. And then I had read about this, I was like, okay, yes, I mean, where would I categorize myself? Would I would I be more inclined towards, let's say, being an activist, or would I say that, okay, maybe being a politician would bring large scale changes or, like long term changes, let's say. So that's one question that I wanted to give you to think about. And then there's a concept of, are you an agitator, innovator, or orchestrator of change, and you can read about all of these things, like where I'm getting all of this from the sources as well. But I just wanted to give you these three lines, which I found very interesting. So basically, it says that agitator is a person who brings the grievances of specific individuals or groups to the forefront of public awareness, while an innovator is someone who creates an actionable solution, right? So it's not just bringing the grievances, but also to create an actionable solution around those grievances. So you would say that person, or like that organization, even, is an innovating organization, or the person is an innovator. And then there is a third category, who's like an orchestra, like who's a person who basically coordinates around groups, like form coalitions, and make sure that, okay, there is something or the other happening at the system level, probably. So again, like the second question would be for us to think about, okay, are we an agitator, innovator, or an orchestrator? And I found this really fascinating, even though I'm very, I don't like to categorize things into something, but it just gives me a framework, and I hope it will give you also a framework to think about how and at what level do you want to engage with the policy changes that we want to bring, not just in education, but in any space. Um, in terms of, like my recommendations, what I've learned so far, I've realized that when I used to work on the ground, I used to be very away from the politics. Like I would say that no, probably it's not my thing. It's really dirty, and it's not something that I would want to engage with. But over the time, I've realized that politics is not a dirty word. It's not always dirty, and it's important to engage with it, especially if you want to bring policy changes. And it's not necessary or necessarily true that politics, like you always have to have a negative connotation associated with politics, or with engagement with politics. It could be very healthy as well, where you have decided that, okay, I am probably going to be playing a role of an innovator in this whole scheme. And while I'm playing this role of an innovator, I will use politics to ensure that the actions that I have thought of bringing towards, right, I'm going to use politics to bring about that change, and that's fine. And you can use politics not just internally within your organizations that you're working, but also outside organizations. Imagining, like, since I've had a lot of experience with the nonprofit space, so I would say, initially I used to think that, okay, nonprofits are, at the outside, and you don't necessarily need to engage a lot with the government to do credible work, which is true. You can do that, but will you eventually scale, or will you eventually bring a long-term solution? There is a question about that. So you have to think a little bit about that. So I would say my recommendation would be to engage very heavily with the politics around, and bring about good change in politics, which is a very important necessity in today's time as well, right? And then uh, in India, I don't know how much it is real, but based on the education that I have had so far, I was never taught about engaging and navigating politics as a skill, But at Harvard, we talk about this a lot, and it is one of the core competencies that in the leadership program we had to learn about. And here nobody says that, okay, it's always dirty, but we see it as a possibility. And like, so try to find out ways where we can engage, and not just engage, but learn how to navigate politics as a very important soft skill, and it can also be probably a hard skill. So doing that. And then the third recommendation and realization that I've had is just using politics to bring change with the government. And the reason that I say this is because the government presently has the scale, they have the reach, and like the democracy itself, especially in India, is that we are governed by a set of representatives of people, right? And it's important that even if we want to, let's say, use our activism as a tool. We use it to influence change with the government and not probably against it. I would say, I mean, there are a lot of movements that have come out. Like the last movement could be India Against Corruption movement that had come about by going against the government. But I would still say that even in that movement, what the people were trying to do, or what the activists were trying to do, were basically trying to bring change by engaging with the government, even though they had to use the method of activism. And it was probably like the Lokpal bill was the thing that they were really concerned about and talking about. So the change when we work with the government, I feel that it sticks, and it has a large capability to sustain over the period of time. So these were some of the recommendations that I was thinking probably to share with all of you. Uh, and then, like just in terms of, like where we are, like as probably you might think that, okay, we are not in a very, influential position, but I feel that we can influence policy from wherever we are, and one of the things that my professor, Paul Revel used to say, and continues to say is that, you just have to start showing up. Like you just have to be in those meetings where policy discussions are happening or policy decisions are being made, even if you can't, let's say, be on the table. But you can see, I remember when the national curriculum, or recently a curriculum had to be, like curriculum changes had to be recommended, the government asked for recommendations from people. So it's important to show up in those places where you feel that, okay, there might be some changes or some things that are happening. So open houses, conversations, social media, use Twitter for good, right? Like not just to attack each other, but probably just showing up and showing your interest in the policy. And we never know, like when a window of opportunity comes, right? So and in a way we need to be ready to take up that window of opportunity to bring change. Like, so if we keep on talking about, and if we know that, okay, we are building some mental models, we are bringing some things in our mind, which probably might be useful in the future. You never know when someone is going to ask you to like be a part of a policy recommendation or something like that. But until and unless you show up, until and unless people know that, okay, you are there, right, in some capacity or in some other way, you will never be. I mean, it's comparatively difficult to be able to exercise your what do you say, exercise your opportunity when that window of opportunity comes, right? So uh, that is one of the ways I feel that we can influence policy. And then it's also important, I feel, to read and create messaging to suit the times, like to know the trends which are happening. For example, recently you would have heard a lot of in education specifically, a lot of trends about social and emotional learning was coming up, right? And you'll see immediately a lot of organizations springing up to suit social and emotional learning, right? But was social and emotional learning never a part of our education system? I would say it was. Like there probably wasn't exactly that word, social and emotional learning. But since the word caught up, and a lot of people who probably wouldn't be able to do something around that before, but they were able to do it because that word was catching up or that term was catching up, and they were at the right place at the right time, creating the work around that, and they just took that window of opportunity and influenced policy in a big way. So uh, so I would say yes, it's important to know where the trend is happening. Even if we don't like the trend, it's important to at least learn from it, so that we can create our messaging and we can create our work around that, so that the window of opportunity comes, we are there, we are acting, we are taking up that opportunity. And then at the end of it, it's also important to be authentic, and it's also important to ask. Like sometimes I used to feel that a lot, especially in India. I don't know why it happens, but usually when you go into conferences, or when you are in a Zoom meeting like this, we feel a lot afraid to ask questions. But I've realized that if you are authentic and if you genuinely have a question, it's really, really important to ask. And I think that's just one of the very simple ways we can influence policy at the education level, or at like in any space. What's the harm in asking a question? The only thing that could happen probably is that you won't get an answer, or your question might not be properly placed, but that's okay. It's important to learn, and like to keep on asking. I see that difference probably a bit here. When I'm in the US, I feel people are much more out there asking questions. It might be my own bias, but it's just my own realization that I've had, that in India we somehow say that, okay, probably it's not okay to ask a question, and maybe it has to do with our education system. I don't know, but it's important that if you're authentic, you can also ask these questions. And then yeah, at the end, it's important to engage with everyone. It's not even if we don't like our opponents, it's important to engage with them, because at the end of the day, any policy change that we want to bring, as leaders or as upcoming leaders, we have to work with people who we don't agree with, right? There's no other way. And there will never be a point in time, any time in history, where everyone is going to agree with us. And if you find yourself, if we find ourselves there, everyone is agreeing with us, it means that somehow we have created an echo chamber, and that's where I feel the learning stops. So it's important to have that learning attitude, because like policy influence different people in different ways. So if we have that learning attitude, if we're authentic, asking questions, like keeping up with the trends, showing up where we can, wherever we can, in whatever capacity we can, and are authentic, at the end of the day, I feel that we, as like wherever we are in our careers right now, can influence policy. We don't need to be right into the government, let's say, like be the prime minister, or I don't know, like be the education minister to influence policy. So yeah, that's what I wanted to share. Like any thoughts, any questions, happy to welcome. This is my email ID. You can reach out to me on any of those at any point in time. And yeah, thank you so much. Thank you for hearing me.
Thank you so much, sir. So I'll begin with the questions. The very first question is from being a project engineer at Wipro to now being a youth leader who is impacting education. What led to this transition? Like, why exactly education? I'm sure this is the most frequently asked question, but still, I'm sure like the audience is keen to know why education.
So I will answer that question, but I just wanted to hear, like, your views about, or anyone in the audience's views about, what I really talked about so far. Anyone who wants to, because I want it to be a bit more engaging, and if that's okay, and I'll definitely come to your question as well. But if anyone wants to say something, or like question, critique,
Yeah,
whatever.
actually, I had a question because thank you. It was a very nicely structured PPT, and I got to learn quite a lot from it. So one of the things that you said was like, it was very important message that resonated with me was engage with politics. And I completely agree with that because being a science, so my previous first degree was like in sciences, and I was taught to just focus in my lab and I never knew what was happening in the world. And when I went to JNU for doing some project, and that's when I realized that people around actually have a lot of knowledge about politics, and I did not even know where I stood on the spectrum. So my question to you is that yes, you have given a lot of steps, like you have told that we should show up at events and we should ask questions. But as a newbie who has no knowledge of politics, or somebody who is just very unaware about the word politics, where should that person start?
I think that's a very fascinating question. Where should you start? I think just like being aware of what's happening around us, like, and how the discourse probably is happening, and and just putting out your views and thoughts around it could possibly be one of the ways. Like, I can share like how I used to do it. So I used to love writing, and I think when I was in class 11th, way back in 2010, when blogs, I think probably in India, were just starting. So I started writing a blog, about my thoughts, for example. And it really helped me. I mean, first, obviously develop my writing capabilities and all of that, but just like, structuring in terms of how am I thinking. And then probably, that there are deeper ways, like I said, you can engage in some of the books, like for example, if you find an author or a person that you find really interesting, like talking about politics, or let's say how to engage with politics. So probably just look out at a Twitter handle, or probably just look out at some of the books. I would prefer more the books, because Twitter is a very different ball game, because you are trying to get attention most of the times there as a social media platform. But in books, people go deep, right? So books I feel is a very interesting way. Like for me, it has worked so far. And then just asking questions, right? Like if probably if there is a question that is in your mind about any of the things like politics or anything, like how this particular change has come about, I'm pretty sure that there are questions similarly to in the minds of other people. And sometimes we just don't get the answers to those questions because we don't ask that question. So yeah. And the newspapers, I don't know how many of you read newspapers, but when I was in about in my engineering, the only thing that I probably did worth noting in engineering was to just learn how to read newspapers really well. So that was another way of like me getting my dose of politics and my dose of how to bring about change, as an upcoming leader, or as a person as well, I would say.
Yeah, thank you, thank you. That's quite a lot. I think with the millennial generation, they have a lot of more resources than uh, like the Gen Z has more resources than the previous generations. So yeah, I'm sure they know a lot more than I do.
Yeah. Okay. Um, and then I'll probably come to then the question that Shivani asked, right? So Shivani was asking how the transition happens, right, Shivani? That was the question.
So what kind of motive? But before that, like adding to your and Nufor's point, I think like don't you think the politics nowadays has become like the two parties are there and they are like just kind of opposing each other. Like they are not focusing on the policies or something that is related to the nation. They are just trying to show down each other, and that's the thing that's currently going on, at least in our politics, as if they are exactly referring to the politics.
I think that will always be there. It's just that, like social media has sort of blown it out of proportion, right? Like we can see whoever is critiquing, and it has just like probably polarized a bit. But I would still say that fundamentally, like at the ground level, changes are still happening, right? Like the country is still running. And there are still policies being made. There are still policies being implemented. There are still interesting aspects, new policies, new challenges. Like new approaches to solving those challenges are coming up, and they're still going on, right? So who is doing that work? Someone is doing it, right? Like there must be people like us who are doing it. It's not that an alien is coming out of somewhere else is doing that. Like we are doing it. So I think it's important to just look deeper than just the surface level that we see, right? Like which is probably we see, okay, the people are attacking each other, which is true. But then a lot of it is also like theoretics, like the, or I would say histrionics, right? Like just like showing people that okay, something is happening, but the work is happening at the ground level. So probably if we don't want to engage in that sort of a work, right, which is a lot of people like us, right? So we probably have to see, okay, where the real change is happening. Is it happening on the ground? Okay, maybe I can contribute by being on the ground. Is it happening at the district level, probably, or at the block level? Do they need any of our help? Can I contribute in some way? Then probably I will go there and uh, work around that, right? So I still feel that at the surface level, it feels that a lot of infighting is happening, but on the ground, I still feel that there is a lot of credible work which is happening. And when you go on the ground, you realize that probably politics is important, but also doing credible work is also important as well. And people appreciate, like across party lines, whatever. If you're doing good work, people appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, so I asked you the previous question about what led to this transition. Could you go back to that?
What leads to this transition? I think I was an outcome probably of an education system that was unable to identify my true interests, you know, and I was good at engineering, you know, like it was not that I did not do well or I was failing in all my exams or something like that. I was good at it, and I was at Wipro, which is an MNC, and I was a software developer. You know, like I was writing codes and everything for various clients. But I just realized that that's not where my interest lies, and somehow my educational system, which which I've been part of, and a lot of you have also been part of, that system was not able to help me identify my interests, and uh, that's where I felt that okay, I have to take probably like I have to probably take charge of my own life. And like I was 23 at that time, and I realized that probably this is the best time to take the risk. And I just left my job, and I went to the villages in Bihar. Like I went to Bihar, and I was a State Bank of India's Youth for India fellow. And there I met real people, in that sense that people whose challenges I could see. And since I felt that my education has not prepared me, I felt probably that I could contribute a bit in helping other students, and like other people's education was probably be a reality. So I just started to tell stories to children, like to meet a lot of government school principals, government school teachers, and students who go to government schools in a state like Bihar, and try to understand the challenges. And I just fell in love with it. And I've been trying to do something or the other for these set of children and these set of like communities. And that's where I feel my purpose lies, like for this life at least. So yeah, I think it's just something that I took the risk on, and I'm happy where I'm. With that. So,
Okay, so like we have got a question in our chat. I'll read it out. He's asking why is India turning more towards caste and religion politics? It's all about blame game and opposition is always criticizing rather than suggesting alternatives. So I guess it's like kind of similar to my question, but if you still want to go over it.
yeah, I I would say like I've answered it, but like I would say even in this question, right? Like, so why can't someone let's say suggest an alternative to that themselves? Like and yeah, and I will agree that probably I'm not the best person to talk about caste and like religion. Because I consider myself probably an educationist, but just like a short answer would be that I think the alternative is in our hands. It's up to us how we want to create the narrative. We are the narrative creators. I would say in whatever capacity we can. So yeah.
Okay, so I'll proceed with another question. So like it's about the education system that we have in our country. So how about demanding condition specific mainstream schooling, and like are we better off with the national curriculum, or there are some challenges still looming in our national curriculum, and the policies that are formed, are they better, or should we go about in some federation way, like deeper down to the level and not just a national curriculum that we have?
That's a good question. So, um, I don't know if I'll be able to do justice to this answer, but I feel that the policy that we have, like the NEP 2020, it's a really amazing policy. Like the level of work that has happened on framing that policy, and like there's this work which is happening on the national curriculum framework as we speak, and even the previous national curriculum frameworks, if you read it, like they're really good. I mean, the policy on the paper, the framework on the paper, they look really nice. The problem lies somewhere with the implementation of it. And I think India, being such a diverse country, right, we speak so many languages. I think one of the most interesting thing for me in this policy is the you know is the language of instruction that has changed, right? So I think I think there was this question that you had asked about, like nature-centered policies as well, right? In one of the articles that I had written. So I think the first thing that a child interacts with probably is the language, right? And it are the people around in the language that the other people talk around. So I think doing that policy change is very important, and I fully support and fully appreciate that. I just have a feeling that we need to do a lot more work in terms of seeping that policy into the ground, like into at the block level, at the village level. Not I'm not just saying like at the state level or the national level. Yes, the policies are being created there, but the implementation happens at the village level, at the block level, at the district level. So how can we basically make sure that whatever changes that we are proposing, it's basically seeping into that level? I think that's where our challenge lies, and I feel that the government is trying to do a lot on that. It just, I mean, the policy came in 2020 and the COVID happened, right? So 2 years completely, we couldn't do anything probably. We did a lot of things, but probably we couldn't do it at that intensity that the government might have thought about, right? Like the whole world stopped in some capacity. So I think yes. I mean, it's important to know that the implementation will always happen on the ground, and I think it will happen through people like us, and like through meeting and interacting with the teachers who are there. I really appreciate the work that Sarkari School does, because it brings out the stories of these like very simple teachers who are doing incredible work, but there's no recognition or like there's no support to them, right? So we have to identify those case studies and those instances, and then amplify them in some way or the other. So yeah, I probably might have not answered it perfectly, but I hope it gives some sense of how I'm thinking about it.
No, sir, that is perfectly fine. Like, I also have been to a government school. I come from a village. And it's like people who come for teaching there, they are like, okay, the very first day they'll come, they are so enthusiastic and all. But as soon as the day passes by, they are like, okay, they assume it to be okay. It's like the government, like village students, they don't desire that much education, or they are not that keen to learn. So after some day, that's like it's common for them. They'll come late, they'll go early. It's just that they'll think, okay, the students are coming for food or clothing. That's it. So it somehow kind of gets into their mind that okay, they are just for these things, and even they are not that enthusiastic to like deliver their education, even though they are so educated and have earned a lot of degrees. I think we have got
Yeah.
questions. Adruja, you have some questions, you can go ahead.
Thank you, first of all, for such an insightful session. I hope I'm audible.
You
Yes.
are audible.
Yeah, thank you. So, I'm really glad that so you spoke about NEP being such an incredible making curriculums an incredible policy in itself, and the problem lies somewhere in the implementation. So, do you think that this gap between policy making and policy implementation and policy is not working per se as planned, it stems from the fact that the community the policy is targeting, that community hasn't been properly researched. What do they want? What are the lacunas that they can face? Is that a lack of ground level research? And if so, what can we as, say, policy research interns can focus on so as to bridge this gap?
Hmm. I think that's a very good question. So I think I feel like my bias probably is around the fact that there are a lot of research already available. There are so many NGOs in India, right, who are so close to the community, who knows the pain points of the community, right? Is just that we probably, like I was saying, like my bias is towards action, like, so are we acting enough to make those changes, right? And I would borrow this quote from one of my seniors at Vision India Foundation. His name is Raghav, and he says that any policy that is not implemented on the ground is no policy at all. Like he basically says that, like you can't say that a policy is great. Like, for example, we can't say that NEP is so great, but if we can't implement it on the ground, like I don't think it's a great policy, and I completely agree with that. So I think uh, it's important to have researchers, like people who are continuously researching and researching, which is very, very important. Like it's a very important thing to do. But at the same time, I feel we need more hands on the deck. Like at the village level, people like you who can probably contribute a year of your life itself on the ground. Like taking up all the research that has already been there about those communities and everything, and just trying to like bring some change through that. And in terms of your question about whether the government is not doing enough research, I think they are. Like there is enough research happening. It's just that the action is somehow not happening. Or even if it is happening, it's not leading to the results, or like to the outcomes of the policies that we create. Not just specifically about any, but just in terms of any policy, right? So and yeah, for the youth, probably we might also have to be those policy implementers in some way or the other, right? Either by I don't know, like by acting as consultants, probably, to these implementing organizations, even to the government, probably by ourselves being in the government, right? Like the bureaucrats, for example. I mean, we criticize them a lot, and but it's true that the bureaucrats also are our arm, or the government's arm into implementation, right? They're the people who are implementing things on the ground. So even if we can't become probably, or if we are not interested in becoming a bureaucrat, we could someday or the other engage with them in supporting them. So I think the bias has to be towards action, while making sure that okay, the research that we are doing is happening as well. And at the end of the day, we also have to see where our own capabilities or like interests lie, right? For example, it's not necessary that all of you are interested in research, right? Probably is that you want to see action on the ground, and that's completely fair. It's your role in this world, right? And but it's important to understand what role is there for you, while also making sure that like there are other very important roles as well, and you have to learn from all of the other roles as well, and other people as well.
Thank you.
I think we have got two questions in our chat box. So the first one is, why is Indian education system more influenced by soft power of Western countries? Why don't we strengthen our cultural grip on the education sector?
I don't know. I mean, um, I think sometimes we just find it easy to blame, right? Like on the Western culture, and like on the outside things. But internally, like the people that I've met all over the years in the villages, I feel they most of them are very rooted in their realities, and like in their culture. So in a way, while we might think that yes, it's being influenced by the Western philosophy and everything, uh, I still feel that on the ground people are very much aware of their culture, and they practice their culture very, very, very strongly. It's just that we have to find a way to include those cultures, like throughout, not just like one single culture probably, but all of the cultures into our education systems. And I feel it's super, super important, uh, because yeah, that's just making the learning very authentic for the learner. So I don't have the right answer probably for that, but it's just that I would say again, like if you think that there is a bias or if there is a lot of influence, change it. Like what's stopping us in a way.
Yeah, thank you. But still, just to add on, what I think is, can I?
Yeah. Yes, of
Yeah.
course.
So what I think is like we have been like at first we were colonized and the Cold War happened, and then it's like the Western nations are so ahead of ourselves in some terms that we look forward to them, and it's like just to be a survival of the fittest, we at times have to follow them. Otherwise, if we are like just engrossed in our own self as a nation, we won't be able to compete with the Western nations or the nations at a level. So I think that's why it could be that somewhat we are looking towards Western nations for educations and culture. But yeah, still it's right that we have to maintain our culture that is in our roots. But still, if we are especially talking about education, I think it's because that they are so ahead of ourselves that we look forward to them. Okay, we have to learn something from them, but yeah, we should have something of our own as well.
I agree. I mean, I would say, and I can share that, one of the research projects that I was working on when I was with the Vision India Foundation was to identify some of the like traditional gurukuls that are there presently, but who gurukuls who have also, or like like Indic knowledge education systems who have also uh, sort of combined with the modern realities of today, right? We cannot, it's a globalized world, it's a reality that we cannot sort of be like cocooned in our own realities, right? We have to engage with the world. There's no other way, instead of engaging with the world. So but there are institutes which are doing something like that. So if you want to know more, like happy to direct towards them. One of them is probably Isha Home School, which is run by Sadhguru. So we visited that school, and it's a very beautiful amalgamation of the Indic knowledge systems and the modern realities of the world, right? Rishi Valley School is also one of the schools. Very interesting work that they're doing, and there are a lot of other examples as well. Like uh, somewhere I feel that like we say that okay, our culture is the like has a lot of knowledge. It's true, but we feel that we can learn from everywhere, and like as a culture, like as people, we have been very inclusive, right? Like of every culture, of every individual, or like individual communities or different groups of people who have come. So we can learn and be diverse, and like be inclusive about all of that, but while at the same time be true to who we feel are we are in a way. So there are tons of examples who are trying to do that, and I think it's very important to sort of research probably on them and probably visit once in a while to these institutes.
Okay, so we have got another question, and it's about vocational education implementation in our high school curriculum, as it would reduce the problems of unemployment to a certain extent, and like people would earn from what they like. So, what do you have to say about this?
Um, I'm not sure how it will turn out to be, but I know that there is a lot of focus on that in the national education policy this time. A very interesting case is that of Finland, I think. So if you read about Finland's education system, I think they segregate. I'm not sure whether at what stage do they segregate, but I think it's after class 10 level in India, where people can decide, okay, are they going to be specializing in the vocational space, or are they going to go into more academic type of work. And I think with this education policy, we are making those efforts. We are trying to do that. But I agree that there is not a lot of focus on that, or has not been a lot of focus on that for the past few years. But yes, building something vocational, having some skills to do something with your hand is super important, especially if you are trying to go the entrepreneurial route. Like in India, our manufacturing sector is still growing, right? Like we probably might be it might be a good idea to learn some of these hard skills and contribute in the manufacturing space, probably. So yeah, I think that's my take on that.
Okay, so the other question I have got is like, how do you think changes related to the technology are going to embrace the learning potential in keeping the Indian perspective in mind? And like, as we know, that the digital education has become a trend in the last 2 years due to this pandemic. So, what is your say on this?
Can you repeat the question?
I was saying like the changes related to technology, like Like, how is it going to impact our learning potential? As we know, in India, especially, we don't have that much digital access to everybody. And in the last 2 years, due to the pandemic, the digital education has become quite a trend in colleges and even in schools. So, what is your say about that?
I think digital education is here to stay. Like it's not going anywhere. And I think in the pandemic, so I was working at Barefoot College International, right? So we realized, and we didn't realize it until we did the survey, that so we were working with about 1,500, 1,600 kids, and we realized that 85% of our kids don't have a smartphone. Like, and these are, so our schools were running in some of the remotest locations in the country, and that's the reality of digital education there, right? So 85% I'm saying. And then we realized, we went further deeper, and then we did more research, and we realized that 55% of them have a basic keypad phone. And we had to design our solutions accordingly, right, because of the reality. So what we did was that we we did IVR, if you know, interactive voice response technology, which is basically, if you, let's say, if you do a call center thing, right? So you have to press one and then two and then three to go from one step to another. So we created our curriculum around that and delivered those to children. So, but obviously it was very low touch. Like, it was not something that is comparable to, let's say, a Zoom call, for example, or like an application on an iPad or something like that. But my take overall is that yes, it's going to stay, and it's important that we realize these challenges that we have in terms of like accessibility issues, but the government and like the private vendors, they're working really, I would say, at a very rapid pace to like make sure that internet reaches everywhere. And I think in the next 5-10 years we will see much more penetration. So in a way, this whole market is going to open up of students and of people who are presently not in this internet fold or in this digital fold, but they are going to come. So are we prepared for that? In that sense, I would say that we need a lot more people to be prepared, because like a lot of tech companies, I will not probably name any of those, but a lot of tech companies are just selling education in a way to get the customers, right? But is the education also happening in this way it is supposed to be, in alignment with the policy goals? I'm not too sure. Like, I have my doubts in that. um, so in that way, yes. So where I see the next 5-10 years, where a lot more work needs to be done, is to make sure that we know, first of all, the people who are going to come in this fold of new digital education, and we have solutions which are in alignment with their needs and their realities and their culture, like you were saying, instead of just like selling them anything which probably might be influenced by whoever, and like with whatever objectives. So I think that is one of the core works that needs to be done by a lot of entrepreneurs and a lot of people who are interested in education, and also the policy level work as well. I would say there is a lot of discussion even today going on about, do we need to put some regulations around edtech solutions, like, and all of that. So I think we as individuals have to keep at the top of the research that is happening around that, and like the changes that are happening around that, so that we can influence any policy recommendations that are going to come around that. And I'm very sensitive to that aspect, because I feel that the communities that we work with in the villages, they have their own knowledge systems, like they have their own culture, and they have their own traditions and all of that. And it shouldn't happen that a company, or like a company who has their own understanding about education, is going to come and just like completely uproot their education realities, for example, and say that, okay, probably this is not the correct way to learn, this is the only way to learn, right? So I think I don't think that should happen, and I'm very sensitive to towards that, and I'm trying to work around making sure that doesn't happen.
Yeah, so we have got another question. It's about like improvising the perception of financial independence in our society. As in Western countries, it's like the students are studying side by side, they are doing some part-time jobs and paying their fees and their necessity. But in India, it's not that like it's not a culture. So, do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I mean, in India, uh, it happens. I feel it's just that it's about the exposure. How much exposure do we get from like our surrounding and our school and our families in that sense to be able to do work while studying, for example. I think it's a super important skill. It teaches you a lot. And in today's world where like Zoom and like all these technologies have made it so easy to interact with people, and work remotely, I think it's very important that we should cultivate that habit. And I think the parents also, I feel a bit of change, like especially from the parents that are coming in a way that they accept it because they've also somewhere been there. And yeah, I think it should be appreciated, and it should be encouraged, is what I would say.
So this is the last question. Like, what advice would you like to give to the students or the audience that we have about like which area to focus on to have a more effective impact on our society as in terms of policy and those who are trying to pursue their career in the education sector?
Mm. I think education needs a lot of hands on deck, right? I mean, we still need a lot of work to be done. I would say that pick any aspect of education. If you're interested in curriculum, if you're interested in leadership, for example, and if you're interested in research, if you're interested in policy making, just like pick any of those and like just try to do it really well. I would say, like instead of trying to do like 5, 6 things at a time, but just like pick one and just like go deep into it. While also having, like having said that, while you go deep into it, probably it's also key to know different things around, right? We cannot, like I said initially, cannot be in a bubble, or cannot be in isolation or in our own cocoon. But being focused is very important. I feel that, I mean, if I in my early, I would say like when I was in class 10th or 11th or like engineering, if anyone would have told me how I can maintain my focus on a particular thing and try to keep on doing it again and again and failing and again, I would have been, probably in a very different space even today, right? One thing that really helped me, I don't know how it's gonna help everyone else, was just like being engaged in a deep thought process, in deep reflection processes. It could either be through writing, or it could either be through just meditation, for example, sadhana, which we call, right? And it just helps you to know, okay, what is it internally that you really want, and how can you change the world through that. And I'm of this belief that all of us come with very unique talents and very unique capabilities. It's just a matter of finding it and just being very focused on that, right, in some way or the other. So yeah, just pick any particular aspect that interests you, but reflect a lot on what aspect is that we are interested in, and then just do it. Like, just be at it. Just like keep on doing it, and you'll like fail thousands of times. I feel like I don't know how many times I never thought that I could be, let's say, studying at Harvard, for example, because I didn't know. And it's just that I try to keep an optimistic look, and hope that my heart is in the right place, or your heart is in the right place in that way, and just keep on doing it. That's it, I think.
Okay, thank you, sir. So like we ended here. It was nice listening from you, and it was like we learned a lot. At least for me, I learned a lot because I got to understand what exactly happens, and we need to like we need not stay away from politics and get involved in it. And we need to speak out. Like at times, even I myself do. Okay, I've got a question, but I'm like, okay, like it's not the right question to ask, or okay, somehow the teacher or the professor would explain it in some other time. So it's so good to like come out with our own questions and all. So it was great listening from you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. I'll also share my email ID, so if anyone wants to reach out, have a follow-up conversation, anything, I'll be really happy to do that. And yeah,
Thank you once again, and thank you everybody for giving your time and joining.